girl, Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Bebe Means Business Show. This is your show every week. I get really excited about having the opportunity to speak with you and give you information, education, tips, and advice about anything and everything to do with business. For those of you who are joining me for the very first time, I'm your host, Bebe Clement, and I run a group of small companies. I'm also the author of the book, How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, which has sold over 5,000 copies. And you can purchase that book from Amazon on our website for $12.99. So I just want to say thank you and welcome to everybody that's here. I want to say thank you to all the faithful listeners who tune in, week out, and for all the questions that you send in, and all the comments and the congratulations and the thanks that you send in. Keep them coming. I love to hear them. It encourages us to continue the show. Also, I give a shout out. I know I don't do this often. Also, want to give a shout out to my wonderful team, my producer Archie, and the wonderful team at Starr Radio, who do such hard work to ensure that we have a really good session. Okay, so last week, for those of you who tuned in, we had a repeat, and this is something that I do so often because people request it. So we go through some of the past shows that we've done that people thought was really good, gave them a lot of information or really connected with them, and then we just run it again. So that's what we did last week. But the week before was a live show, and on that live show I had two very, very special guests. For those of you who didn't tune in, we were celebrating, as you know, March was National Women's Month, but we were celebrating women in business. And I had two amazing guests on my show, Lisa Newton, as well as Shalala B. And Shalala B has made great waves and strides in the education sector in the UK. And Lisa Newton, who is a serial entrepreneur, but her main business is a bookkeeping company. And she's done very well. And I want to thank all my guests for coming on. We've done a lot of advice, things that they've done wrong, that they gave us advice to avoid, and their successes. They shared that as well. I thought Lisa was particularly interesting because, unlike most of us who, usually you spend years and years working for somebody else and then you either get pushed or you jump into entrepreneurship. But Lisa has never had a job, and she shared how that came about with us. She said after she went to university to study accounting, and she then went and did her master's, I think she did a master's in business or something, and then one day she was on a job interview, and her mother called her on the phone, and her mother said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm just on my way to a job interview." And her mother said, "Why? Why are you going for a job interview? Lisa, you have enough brains, you have enough experience to start your own business. Why are you going to ask somebody else to be handing you a paycheck?" And so Lisa said she was really taken aback by that. And she said, "Well, I really don't have enough money to start my own business." So her mom said, "Okay, I'll lend you £100. If you go look for the rest, I'll lend you the first £100. And that's what she did. And she said that she started her first business with £150. So for those of you who use finance as an excuse, you can see someone who built up a really, really good business on £150. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think as parents, particularly in my community, we must encourage our children to move away from the mentality of a job. We've got to move them away from job seekers mentality to being those of job creators. And if they work for anyone, it should be just to learn the ropes or get a little bit of experience under their belt. But they have to start thinking, how can I create a job, as opposed to how can I go seek a job. I've told my children personally that they must work for anybody. My hope and my that they do not work for anybody for more than 5 years. But in order to make that happen, we as parents must be in a financial position that we can assist them in making that choice, where they can sustain themselves while they are finding their feet. But how are we going to do that if we ourselves are still living from paycheck to paycheck or hand to mouth? So bottom line, I think we must continue in our quest to not only just create wealth as individuals, but as a community. We must continue to learn about finance. We must continue to educate ourselves. And so today, I'm going to be talking about the role of ownership in wealth creation. The role of ownership in wealth creation. But before I do that, just to say that this will be a good time, if you want to connect with me online, this will be a good time for you to do that. If you're a Twitter kind of person, my Twitter handle is at Bebe Clement. That's at Bebe Clement, BebeClement, as you can see on the screen. And if you are more an Instagram kind of person, it is Bebe_Clement, Bebe_Clement. And indeed, if you are a LinkedIn kind of person, then if you just put in my name on LinkedIn, I will turn up. Okay, not sure if we're having technical problems. Looks like the connection is quite poor, so you're just going to have to bear with me. But hopefully we'll soldier through. Okay, so just in case you didn't catch that, I was giving my social media handles, and it's Bebe_Clement on Instagram, and Bebe at Bebe Clement on Twitter. Okay. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about the role of ownership in wealth creation. Why? Because if we are not seeing financial results that reflect the amount of work and effort that we have put in, and the sacrifices that we have made, then we must ask ourselves some very difficult questions. One of those questions that we need to ask ourselves is, do we know and understand how things work when it comes to money making, or have we bought into a lie? We really have to ask ourselves. In other words, if you've been working for 20 years and you look at your bank account and your bank account is not reflecting the hard work that you have put in, then we've got to ask ourselves the question, where have I gone wrong? And I personally think that wealth creation is a building project. That's the way I see it. It's a building project. And each successive generation should be able to build upon the last. So what I mean by that is, if my kids have to start, financially speaking, from ground zero again, then clearly somewhere I have failed along the way. So today we're going to have a bit of an economics lesson coming up. And then we'll look at how important it is to own. What is the connection between ownership and creating and building wealth? So I'm going to take a short break right here, and then as soon as we come back, we'll delve right into it. Don't go away.
Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Okay, so welcome back to the Bebe Means Business Show. It is a pleasure to have you again this week, and I'm your host, Bebe Clement. And today, I'm talking about the connection between the concept of ownership and building wealth. Okay, so I was saying just before we left that wealth creation, as far as I'm concerned, is a building project, and that each generation, each successive generation, should be able to build upon the last. So what you have done financially, your children should be able to build upon that. They shouldn't have to start from ground zero again. Otherwise, something has gone wrong. So we're going to talk a little bit about economics right now. And of course, just a point to remind you that this is a live show. So if you have any questions about anything that I'm talking about today, then by all means, please get in touch. You can send us something on Twitter, send us a tweet. Our Twitter handle is @Starr Radio UK, or you can text or WhatsApp us on the following number, 07539 661 744. That's 39 744, or email us at info@starradiouk, or of course just put something in the chat on Facebook. Okay, so now politicians tell us that the wealth of our nation, or indeed any nation, is up for grabs for those that work hard and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Okay, I think that they purposely tell us that. I think they tell us that as a diversion tactic. And while we are busy working hard and struggling and getting every shift possible that we can get, others are educating themselves on how the system works. And not only that, but how to work the system, because they're two different things. You may know how the system works, you also have to learn how to work the system. In other words, how to make that system work for you so that you are able to build wealth. So this is Financial Literacy 101, people. And I know I've spoken about some of the concepts I'm going to speak about today. I know I've spoken about them before, but repetition is a good education tool. So let's go. So remember, we're talking about ownership. Why? I really want you to get the next sentence, because ownership translates into profit for the owner. Ownership translates into profit for the owner. And profit, what does profit do? It gives you choices. Profit gives you power, profit buys you, and it gives you choices. It is profit that allows you to send your child to the best schools, rather than the local comprehensive the teachers have probably given up, and rather than teach, what they're doing is, in the main, crowd control. It is profit that allows you to send your children to the best schools. It is profit that buys you membership into the best clubs, where you become on first name basis with people who are in positions of power. Those who, behind closed doors, make decisions that affect your life and my life. It is profit that gives you access to those kind of clubs. It is profit that helps you buy the services of the best advisors that can show you how to position your assets and take advantage of perhaps tax laws. The tax man doesn't get his greedy little hands on all that you have built. It is profit that allows you to have access to that kind of advisory system, that invaluable advisory system. But most important, as far as I'm concerned, it's profit that buys you time. Time. And your most important asset in life is time. And I think, as regards time, the coronavirus has been, in a way, because it's provided for so many people the opportunity to sit back. Those of you who are working from home, or those who have been made redundant, and let me tell you, being made redundant is not the worst thing that can happen to you. It can actually propel you into your destiny. So I think the virus has helped many people actually have time, for once in many years, to actually see where they are, to assess where they are in life, and decide exactly what is it that I want to do with my life. What is it, especially by way of starting a business. Now you actually have the time to do that. So in a way, it's not all been bad. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about capitalism and how ownership relates to capitalism. So capitalism is a social economic system. So it means people, it means money. A social economic system whereby the factors of production, land, labor, and capital are privately and owned and controlled Please get those phrases, they're very important. They're privately owned and controlled by a very small group of people. And that is why I say that when the politicians tell us that the wealth of the nation is up for grabs for anybody who works hard, they are lying to us. That isn't how capitalism works. And most companies are now operating some form, most countries are now operating some form of capitalism by way of practice. So capitalism, again, is a social economic system. So it's a system that dictates how money and people interrelate and integrate and operate and relate. And a system is something that has it's something that has a purpose in mind. It is a way of working that has a specific purpose in mind. One of the purposes of a capitalist system is to gain as much profit as possible. That's really what it is. And I hate to burst your bubble, but for those of you who think the government is going to come to your aid by way of the economic system in which you operate, and that when economics times are good, you are going to do well financially. When the government puts in place certain things that are going to help you prosper, you will be waiting a long time, because that's not how capitalism works. The whole essence of capitalism is to enlist as much as possible from the system. So you have got
Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life. Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life. Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
We sincerely apologize for the break in the transmission due to a technical error that is being sorted out. So Bebe Clement is going to be
Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Up as much as possible. So like I was saying, a leasehold is not as good as a freehold. It's not as good as a freehold because whereas in a freehold you don't only own the property but you actually also own the land. But in a leasehold you don't. You only own the property. Therefore, to the freeholder. That is why you have to pay for things like ground rent because you don't own the land. But notwithstanding, it still gives you a measure of ownership. So can you see that ownership in property is really, really important? Now, because ownership is important by way of property, for those of you who are renting, I do have a bit of bad news. And please hear me when I say I'm not trying to be rude in any way, shape or form when I say what I'm about to say. If you are renting in a capitalist society where ownership is everything, if you are renting in a capitalist society, then you are doing yourself a disservice. You really are. You're doing yourself a disservice because rent money is really dead money. Rent money is dead money. You might as well be taking that money and throwing it in the gutter because it does not afford you any rights. If you are renting and you die, you cannot pass that property to your children. They can't inherit it. And there's a limit to what you can do to increase the value of that property without the authority of the landlord. You can't do it. So whereas if you own your own property, if you're a freeholder or you're to an extent a leaseholder, there are certain things that you can do to the property that can increase its value. So already market value, the market forces itself will increase the value of the property. But there are things that you as a freeholder can do that will increase its value. Even just painting the house, just painting your house can increase its value by several thousand. So it is really important that by way of property, you own. You own. So can you see that rich people do not rent, they own. They own. So that's important. Now, as regards land, the physical land, buying land is important. One, because it is a scarce or limited commodity. A friend of mine said her dad used to say, buy as much land as you can, because God isn't making any more of it. And that is, I mean, it's funny, but it's really true. God is not making any more of it. So that makes it a scarce commodity. That makes it valuable. And those who own can translate the ownership or the profit they get from owning land into profit. All right. Now, can I say a bit about land? Land, like property, tends to increase. It tends to increase. Now, I was reading an article, which I think is quite important. I was reading an article the other day that, what's his name? Bill Gates. Bill Gates is now the single highest owner of farmland in America. The single highest owner of farmland in America. Over the past few years, that man has been very secretly and very quietly in buying up major farmland sites. Why would he be doing that? He's not just buying any land, he's buying farmland. Why is he doing that? Because he realizes clearly that he can control the food chain if he does that. If you own practically all the land, then you can dictate what is grown, how it is grown, and he's talking to us now about eating synthetic beef and synthetic plants and all that kind of thing. You can dictate that. So I would strongly encourage you, I'm a strong believer that success leaves clues. If those who are in the know of how finances work are buying a certain thing, then you should take heed and begin to buy as well. Those of you who are from Africa, those of you who are from the West Indies, start buying land. I do the same. Start buying land. If you don't want to sell it now, you can just keep it. If you want to give it to your children, you know how much it's going to be worth by the time your children are in a position to inherit it. So start buying land. It's really important that you do that. So that's ownership in relation to land. I now want to talk about ownership in the workplace. Ownership in the workplace. Now, just like I spoke about, owning your own property outright would be the ultimate in relation to land. The same thing in relation to ownership in the marketplace. Owning your own business is the ultimate. Of course, a thriving business, not a struggling business. But you know, we're all struggling at the beginning. In the beginning, when you start a business, but then you grow it. So owning your own business is important. Why is it important? You might be thinking, well, having a small business is not going to make much difference to my life. You are wrong. You are very, very wrong. In America, less than 20% of the workforce own their own business. But those that do represent more than 2/3 of the millionaires in America. So in other words, there is a direct correlation between business ownership and wealth creation and building wealth. Direct correlation. So it's going to make a huge difference to your life. Believe me on this one. It's going to make a huge difference to your life. And then if you do it well, if you build the business well, such that the business can run without you, so that you don't have to be sitting in an office in order to create wealth, you have built a team that can run the business without you, or you have automated your systems such that you don't have to be there, then you can be away doing other things that you really have passion about. Perhaps you want to do charitable work. It will buy you time. So owning your own business is really, really important. Now, if you are not able to own your own business outright, and I would encourage you to do that. Actually, let me say something about that, about owning your own business outright. Now, I spent a lot of time watching successful people, successful entrepreneurs. And one of those that really fascinate me is Oprah Winfrey, of course. She definitely fascinates me. I don't know where this woman was getting her advice, but she did it well. And one of the differences between her and Martha Stewart, you remember Martha Stewart, who was one of the people that we really looked up to in years gone past, still do, still have a lot of respect for what she did. But one of the differences between her and Oprah Winfrey is that she went public with her company. But Oprah Winfrey owns everything in relation to her business outright. She owns the network. She owns the magazine, you know, O Magazine. She owns O Magazine. She owns the OWN. Strange. She calls it OWN. That's right. I never even noticed that. She calls it OWN, which stands for Oprah Winfrey Network, but it's OWN. She owns that outright. Not just the studio, not just the magazine, but everything else that she does in relation to Oprah Winfrey. She owns it outright. The same thing that Tyler Perry does. Tyler Perry, I'm sure you know, is now the owner of the largest film studio in America. And he owns it outright. He refused to go public. He owns it outright. And God bless Tyler Perry. He is now teaching those who are coming up about how to own their stuff outright. So I remember watching Tiffany Haddish and Taraji P. Henson. They were talking about him recently, and they were saying how he's teaching them, particularly in the area of property, and how to own property, and how they don't ever have to go back to being poor if they understand the concept of ownership. Okay, so, but where you cannot be an outright owner, because, you know, honestly, perhaps business is not for everybody. Owning a business is not for everybody. But even if you cannot be an outright owner of a business, you should be seeking to be a shareholder. Now, I want to explain what a shareholder means, because I know not everybody knows. A shareholder is someone who owns a piece of a company. So I want you to think about a pizza. All right, think about a pizza. And the company is the whole pizza. Yeah, the whole pizza. But you may not own the whole pizza, but you own a slice. So imagine the pizza cut into pieces, and you own, your share is a slice of that pizza. So it is important that you become a shareholder, because shareholders are very powerful in the marketplace. They have a lot of power. And remember that it is that ownership that gives you power, and it is that power that translates into profit. So shareholders are able to propose and vote for mergers and acquisitions. Those of you who are shareholders, don't just be a nominal shareholder, be an active one, and influence what happens in that company. So shareholders can propose and vote for mergers and acquisitions. They can have certain people replaced on the board. Now, this is important, particularly for my community, because there are hardly any black people on FTSE 100 companies, particularly in those of us that are in the UK. But if you are a shareholder, you have influence, and you can change that. So I would strongly encourage you to begin to buy shares in companies so that you can have some kind of influence in those companies. You can advocate for dividends in the company. If that company is not giving dividends, you as a shareholder can vote to have dividends for that company. So it's important that we become shareholders. Again, it's a level of ownership. Now, let me say this. If you are in the marketplace and you are not an owner, you are automatically an outsider. That is the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. I can't put it any more succinctly. I can't be any more honest with you. If you are not an owner in the marketplace, you are an outsider. And it doesn't matter how high up the food chain you go, you are therefore perpetually vulnerable in the workplace. Perpetually vulnerable in the workplace, which is, believe me, a place that you don't want to be. I'll never forget a few years ago, there was a gentleman who came to our office, and this gentleman had been the boss of somebody I knew. And he was very high up in the food chain. He was, I think, the Europe-wide HR director for a very profitable, multi-million pound profitable healthcare company in the UK. And I remember he had a meeting with somebody in our office because we were providing meeting room space. And I'll never forget him. I was privy to that meeting. I'll never forget him almost in tears in this meeting, and he was practically asking for some connections and for some help, because he knew that his job was under threat. He'd worked in that company for many years. He thought he was going to retire in that company. Now he was approaching his 60s, and he had been told that his job was under threat. He was being considered for redundancy, something that had never occurred to him, because as the HR director, the Europe-wide HR director, it had always been his job to make those kind of decisions. But now he was being told that his position was being considered for redundancy, and he was in shock. He was in absolute shock. And this man, who was clearly a very, very powerful man, was almost in tears in that meeting and practically having to beg for work. Because he was in a position where he was in a vulnerable position, not just in the workplace, but he'd recently remarried. He was paying alimony to his first wife. He had recently remarried a much younger woman who had much greater demands. They had 2 young children in private school. They'd moved to a much larger house because he didn't see this coming. So let me give you a word of warning. Don't think that because you are so high up the food chain that you cannot become vulnerable, or your job cannot become vulnerable. It can. It definitely can. All right, I'm going to take another short break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the exchange of time for money, and how owning the labor force also is a source of ownership, and which can also translate into profit for those that own. Don't go away.
The author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature. All right.
Get ready for this.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bebe Means Business show. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm your host. Hi, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bebe Means Business show. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm your host, Bebe Clement, and today we're talking about the connection between ownership and wealth creation. Ownership and wealth creation. Okay, so you remember in the definition that I gave of capitalism, I said that it's a socio-economic system whereby the factors of production, land, labor, and capital. So we've talked about land. I want to talk about labor because those who own the labor force are also rich. Now, those of you who are working and you have no other source of income, you are the labor in that equation. You are the labor in the equation, the definition that I gave earlier. And so how does somebody own you? Those who are wealthy, those who are capitalists, they own the labor force. How does somebody own you? They own you when they are able to control your most precious and your most important resource in life. And your most important resource in life is not money, ladies and gentlemen. It is time. So when we go to work for somebody else to build their dream instead of building our own dream, when we go to work for somebody else, what in effect happens is that they control what time you have to be in. You have to be in at 9. You have to work till 12:30. You can only have 30 minutes annual leave, 30 minutes lunch. You have to work till 5:30. Sometimes you're going to have to come in on weekends, that kind of thing. Anybody who is able to do that to you and control the amount of time you can have for leave, how much time you can have to get better when you're ill, they control your greatest resource in life, and therefore they control you. So for those of us who are dependent on a single source of income by way of salary, you are the labor in that equation, and you are indeed controlled by the powers that be because you do not own the business. And I know that sounds upsetting, but that is the truth. So what we do when we go and work for somebody else is that we exchange our time for money. Exchange our time for money. Somebody sent me something on TikTok. I'm not sure who the guy was that was speaking yesterday, but he said something really poignant. It was painful, but it was poignant. He said a paycheck is something they give you to make you forget your dreams. And I thought, wow, really? So that is how it works. So again, it is important that you own so that you don't become something that somebody else can control. All right, very quickly, I'm going to wrap up now. By way of capital, it is those that own the capital, of course, that are able to build wealth. Now, there are different ways in which you can own capital, different ways. And the way in which to do it is to invest in different income streams, develop different income streams. Loads of things you can invest in now, ladies and gentlemen. You can invest, like I've spoken, you can invest in property, you can invest in stocks and shares, you can invest in things like Bitcoin, you can invest in other people's businesses. So you don't necessarily have to own the business yourself, and you don't even necessarily have to be a shareholder. But other people who are up and coming and who need capital investment, you can invest in their business for a slice of their business. You can do that. There's so many other things that you can do. But the bottom line is this, ladies and gentlemen, ensure that you buy appreciative assets. You own appreciative assets. Don't invest in things that are going to depreciate in value, are not going to help you build wealth. Own and buy appreciative assets, because at the end of the day, it is people who own who become rich. You will notice that I didn't say it's people who have degrees or a good education that become rich. Because let's be honest with ourselves, many of us have more degrees than a thermometer, but it has not translated into financial wealth. It is those who own. And you don't have to go to college or uni or have 10 degrees to learn how to own. Book smart and financial smart are two completely different things. It is those that own that become wealthy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end it there today. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. I apologize again for the technical problems we had, but they're not from my end. It was from Skype, and Skype have apologized. They've sent me a note to apologize. So apologies for that. But thank you so much for sticking with it. Thank you for so much for tuning in every week. So I'll be here again next week. I think next week I'm going to have something different. I'm going to do something slightly different. So tune in next week. It will be a surprise. I won't tell you about it, but it will be a surprise. I'm going to do something slightly different. So tune in next week. And in the meantime, stay safe. And remember what I always say. Don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life. Have a
Hi everyone, it's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur and the host of your